Today, in the Attorney Career Advice podcast with Harrison Barnes.
The type of attorney you are, that it really has a lot to do with your brand. And so that's really a lot of what I write about, your brand and how you do things in the market. And the brand that I talk about is how attorneys can be marketable at large and small. Today is a pretty interesting topic, and it's something that a lot of attorneys don't think about, but traditionally is something that attorneys have thought about when they went to law school and also when they come out of law school. And that's the idea that your law degree is a business license. And a lot of times attorneys don't necessarily think of that. Depending on where you went to law school or what your future you think looks like, it's always very important to think about running a business as an attorney, and whether or not that's in a law firm or you're running it on your own. Because the more you think about the fact that you're really running a business, the better off you're actually going to be in the practice of law. And unfortunately, lots of attorneys do not think of their careers that way. And because of that, they many times are dependent on other people. And there's a whole psychology that I'm going to cover today, which is the difference between thinking like an employee inside of a law firm or thinking like the law firm is actually a business that works for you if you work in a law firm. Or you can always go out on your own and start a business as an attorney. Much of what I'm saying goes against what people traditionally think of when they think of the legal profession. And the law is a profession, but the problem is you can quickly find yourself in a dead-end job. You can find yourself unemployed. Your skills and specialty can often become very irrelevant in the marketplace quickly. And you can also often find yourself in geographic locations where there is no work. And this kind of thing is something that I see on a daily basis. In my profession, this profession that I do, I see attorneys all the time that are in locations where they can't get jobs. I see people where they're not advancing. I see people with skills that are no longer relevant. And the problem is that no one really seems to take the time to really think about their careers as businesses. And that's really the most important way for you to think. If you're a good businessman, your career can go very far. If you ignore business realities in terms of the way that your business works, you can get into a lot of trouble. And your objective as a business person always needs to be to stay in the business and to always have work and stuff to do, and hopefully have a growing business. I'm going to talk about three different things. The first is that your career needs to have a marketable product. I'm going to look at your brand and in terms of how to market your brand and how to have a brand in the legal market. And then I'm also going to talk to you about how to explore and how to market your product to be successful. When we do resume workshops, I'm trying to help people create a marketable product. And then when I do a lot of writing on my personal blog, which is harrisonbarnes.com, which talks about how to come up with a personal brand that you can use. And what we do at BCG and Law Crossing and different companies is we talk about how to market your product, meaning how to find the most firms and places to apply to and the most in-house places. This is for attorneys, obviously, but it applies to pretty much anybody if you think about it. The first thing is that your career needs a marketable product. And that's obviously quite obvious, but the problem is that the product qualities, what goes into making your product, will initially determine how much you can sell your product for and where. A business will sell your business as an attorney is going to be selling yourself. But shortly in your career, when your career starts, you'll start having a brand and there'll be particular attributes. And those attributes are going to be pretty obvious. Becoming an attorney, for the most part, is something that starts when many people are in college or even before they go to college, depending on the college they go to. So the quality of the university you go to obviously has some impact on the type of law firm you get into, and it has an impact on the law school you attend, and that can have something to do with it. And then when you go to law school, how well you perform in law school is another thing, and that's important. And the qualities you get for your brand while you're in law school, if you're on a journal and are all going to be product qualities. And then you're obviously investing money in your product by the cost of the school and how hard you work and what you give up in the short term to do well in school. And these things are all going to determine how much you can charge. The people that, and I hate to say this, but people that do go to the best schools and do the best there have the ability to charge the most for their product and do so in the largest markets. So they can go into the most competitive markets and they can do well. If your product is not from the best schools, it's not as easy to do. You have to do very well. And then the next step, you have to make your product marketable. You have to take the bar. And even in California and New York, there's lots of people that have very good grades and stuff in law school. And for whatever reason, it takes them a while to pass the bar exam because they don't study or whatever as much as they should. So you're basically, the way to think about it is when you choose to go to law school, you've made a lot of decisions, and those decisions are going to lead you essentially to have a business. And you're going to sell the product of that business to a law firm, corporation, or government, or someone else. But you're running a business and you have to decide what that business stands for and what it means. And your early brand is going to be your college and law school and where you summered and so forth. And some people, when they come out of law school, have very hot brands, meaning there may be a lot of very desirable things about you, or they may not. So it doesn't really matter. Your brand will certainly evolve throughout your career, but your brand is going to have some early product qualities. And to stay in business, you always have to have a marketable product. What that means is you're going to have lots of decisions along the way about how to operate your business. If someone decides to change the formula to Coke, that's going to have an effect on the marketability of their product. Or if somebody decides to not invest in a new model year for a car, that's going to have an impact. So every decision you make is going to determine how marketable you are. And there's so many choices. When you come out of school, you have to decide, and all throughout your career, you have to decide, do you want to be a big firm lawyer? Do you want to be a solo lawyer? Do you want to be a government attorney or an in-house attorney? You have to make all these decisions. You're always in charge of your legal career. The better decisions you make, the more marketable you're going to be in the future. And there's certain aspects of your product that are never going to change. You're never going to be able to change a lot of things you've done in the past. Your law school, by the way, for those of you that are young, fades into almost very little importance in the long run. But the same things as the first firms you worked at, but you just need to understand that those are product qualities. And the most important thing for any business is how well that business is operating. And the business can certainly operate all sorts of different ways, but the most important thing is how well the business is operating. The legal field is very much like the business world. All businesses need marketable products. And so if you're doing personal injury law at your own solo law firm, that's your product. You'll be able to sell that in certain areas to certain size audiences and not others. But everything is about having a marketable product throughout your career. And the point of any business, of course, is to survive, and for many businesses to grow. What a lot of people don't really think about this, I don't think. They think that they can make all sorts of decisions, and those decisions may not necessarily penalize them. But you have to really think in terms of every decision you make is going to have a long-term impact on the business. If you go in one direction, that's going to have an impact of your ability to sell yourself in other ways in the future. One of the most important aspects of the business is the type of work you do. And if you do tax law, for example, that's an issue. Regardless of the practice area you're in, it's important to understand that those decisions that you make have more appeal to the market than others. You just want to make the best business decisions. You need to think, is that the right decision? And one of the ways that people do that, of course, is by the practice areas they choose. Certain practice areas are more marketable than others. Railroad law, for example, used to be very popular. Different geographic areas, a lot can happen to you based on the geographic area you choose. Some people may choose to work in a smaller market where there is a lot of work in their practice area. Other people may want to be in a larger market. So all of those things are going to have a major bearing on whether or not you succeed. And then the next one, of course, is the importance of your brand to marketing your product. The type of attorney you are, that it really has a lot to do with your brand. And so that's really a lot of what I write about, is your brand and how you do things in the market. And the brand that I talk about is how attorneys can be marketable to large and small law firms, but mainly large law firms. You need to have a good brand. If you're operating your own law firm, the quality of your brand is going to determine the number of clients, the type of clients you get. If you're practicing a large law firm, the quality of your work, your interpersonal relationships, and whether or not you're ultimately bringing in business. The point of all this is that most brands have certain attributes, and over time, you're going to have a specific brand as well. And if you think about how companies operate, companies spend a lot of time and money developing their brands. When you think of BMW or Chevy, you have a thought about what the Chevy brand means. You think you have thoughts about compared to BMW, or the same thing with RC Cola compared to Coke. And you're developing a brand with every decision you make, and where you work, your practice area, and all this is going to have a lot to do with your brand. Most brands can charge more, and they're going to have a lot more interest. The better the brand, the more they can charge. And every decision that you make in terms of the places you choose to work, the type of work you choose to do, the schools you go to, how long you stay at an employer, everything you do are going to really come across and be what your brand ultimately is. The final thing I'm going to talk about today is how to market your brand and product for the most success. You need to think in terms of what's happening. So if your salary is $100,000 a year in a firm, then obviously your billing rate is probably higher than this. But if you were billing $200 an hour and you're expected to bill 2,000 hours a year, this means that your small business is generating $400,000 a year and you're netting $100,000, which actually, from a business standpoint, isn't that bad. The reason is because most businesses do not clear 25% of the money that they generate. So that's actually not that bad. And I'm surprised that most attorneys are most interested in going, I am surprised, I'm sorry, that most attorneys are interested in going to law firms that have the most prestige associated with them, because these are all business decisions. And so you want the amount of money that you collect from your billings to increase. Most people are trying to earn more and more money consistently, and that's just how the process works. But if you're going to make more money at a better firm with a better brand that can bill you out at more money than you would at a brand that's not as good. And so the law firms with the best brands are typically going to give you a better brand. And so everything that happens is a result of the amount of money that you can charge for your services is ultimately is going to be influenced by your brand. And lots of attorneys, for example, do not go to the best law schools, or many of them start out in horrible law firms. And as a matter of fact, the majority of attorneys do not go to the best law schools, don't start out in the best law firms. But out of that group of people, many of them become extremely successful. And I see it all the time. And the reason that happens is because those attorneys become experts in marketing their brand. I've seen so many examples of this. I am friends with several attorneys that have done this, and it's pretty remarkable. And you can do this in almost any practice area you want. And you don't have to go to the best schools. You don't have to have the best, work in the best firms. You don't even need to work in a firm at all if you understand that it's all about how you position yourself. The most important thing that an attorney can do is really understand the rules of marketing. And if it was me and I was practicing law right now, I would be reading books about marketing pretty much all the time. I would want to do everything I could to understand marketing because I want to position myself in the most effective way. How do I look like the best product? How do I stand out from the crowd? How do I not become a commodity that gets pushed down by the market? How do I do all these things? And so becoming a student of marketing is a hugely important thing. And honestly, most of the most successful attorneys out there have become students of marketing, and they've learned about marketing, and they become very enthusiastic about marketing. And you should too. If you understand marketing, you'll be able to really put together a good brand, and you should be studying marketing all the time. And you should read several books a year if you're an attorney, because your brand will influence how you're seen inside of your law firm. It'll influence how you're seen if you start your own practice. It'll influence the decisions. And so here's a couple of points. The first thing is, when you market anything, you need to appeal to people on a rational level, meaning that the cost makes sense, but you also need to appeal to them on an emotional level. And with personal services are very important because people, they trust what you're going to do, and they don't have any real yardstick to measure the quality of what you're offering. So they just have to trust in the fact that you may offer a good service. Most law firms will prefer to hire a certain type of person that has a similar background. Your product actually may be a very good product in some areas of the country, and others in some types of firms, and not others. And that's fine. I spent almost a year trying to write a book about personal injury attorneys. And I noticed that they were very successful, but they typically didn't have a lot of big firm experience or the best law firm credentials. But they were just extremely good at marketing themselves in terms of the way they position themselves, in terms of the way the type of arguments they were able to make for people to use them, the way that they talked about their victories and so forth. And so that's a very powerful thing, is to be able to market yourself. And very few people do that. And a lot of very good personal injury attorneys also are just very flamboyant. Where you market yourself is important. In small towns, there's lots of very successful attorneys and that may have grown up in the area and are very much like the people they're working for. And what's very interesting is even in small towns, the most successful ones are the ones that are doing the most marketing. They're going to the local clubs and bar associations, have billboards on the road, and people talk about them. This is just all marketing. If you know how to do marketing, you can really run a big firm. I know one attorney that runs a firm that she does over $25 million a year in revenue, and it's in just a niche practice area. She never worked in a law firm, and it's all self-taught. But it's all about marketing, and she spends all of her time marketing, and hardly other people do the practice of the law, and she's become very successful and well known in her specialty. Lots of people, if they understand marketing, can do very well. And it's the same thing in big cities. In big cities, you may try to get clients to come to your firm, and that's a marketing component, and how you're positioned and how you look to the clients. And a large part of what I do for a living is position attorneys. And so today, if anyone has questions about how to market themselves and position themselves, I'd love to talk about that. It's something I can certainly talk about all day. It's a very interesting topic. And one of the ways that I get people jobs is basically by positioning them in a certain way. And I package them so I know what to say in order to make them look attractive to a certain brand of firm. and how to take their experience and make it look a certain way. And the work we do is not dishonest. It's just knowing the things to say to a particular firm about someone that firm is buying and making them look like what the customer wants. And the most important thing you can do in your career is to think about your career as a small business and think about your brand as a small business, think about your product, and do everything you can to make sure there's a market for your product. And those are the most important things. And this is a ongoing topic. There's lots of articles that I've written on BCG about treating your career like a small business and other aspects about why a license, getting your bar card and stuff is a license to open a business. And from a business standpoint, every attorney should have some sort of fundamental, to the extent they can, understanding of economics and understanding of business and understanding of marketing. The more you do, the less you're going to be dependent on other people that are making those business decisions for you. So if you go to work in a law firm, other people are making business decisions. So you need to understand where you sit and all that stuff. I think that's about it. Thank you. And I will talk to everyone next week.
That's all the time we have for this edition of the show. If you're an attorney looking for a change, head on to bcgsearch.com.